content warning, as always.
Hey, before we get into it, we just want to make something clear.
Yeah, this podcast isn't professional advice. We're not doctors, therapists, or mental health experts.
We're just two mates having honest conversations, sharing my story, my experiences, and what's helped me survive things like PTSD, anxiety, depression, grief, and a whole lot of chaos in between.
What works for one person might not work for another. So please, take what you need, leave the rest, and always reach out to a professional if you need that extra support.
This is real life, it's raw, it's mine. And we're just here to make sure no one feels like they're walking through the dark alone. G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of Finding Light in Darkness. It's Scott here. If this is your first time listening, take a breath. And if you've been with us since episode 1, thank you for walking this road with me.
Hey legends, Michael here too. Now's your chance to grab a cuppa, make yourself comfy, pause if you need to. We'll start in about 2.5 minutes, but we wanted to say hi first.
Yeah, leave the light on. If I'll ever change, things to think about than that. Like deadlines, rent's due, bills pile up, family day in, day out, the clock's mocking me, getting old, oh, got the kids.
Today's episode is a deep one. It's called The Long RoadHome, and we mean that in more ways than one. Coming home mentally, emotionally, spiritually, not just physically. So whether you're driving, walking, curled up in bed, or standing in the dark staring at the wall like I've done more times than I can count, you're not alone. Episode 15. Where is home when you feel homeless? In your mind? You know what's strange, Michael? For most of my life, I've struggled to answer what should be a simple question. Where's home? People always ask it so casually, like it's a postcode or a suburb. But when you've lived through trauma, grief, anxiety, PTSD, home isn't always a place. Sometimes it's just a memory, or worse, an emptiness where a memory used to be.
That hits deep, mate. I think a lot of people listening will get that. I've had times where I've been surrounded by people, in a house I paid for, in a room I painted myself, and still felt like I was squatting in someone else's life. What do you think made you start feeling like that? Was it the floods, or did it start earlier?
Way earlier. I reckon it goes back to childhood before I could even put a word to it. I used to look around at other kids, at their families, the way they fit into their homes, and I felt like a visitor, even when I was in my own bed, even when I was surrounded by the same walls. I guess that's what happens when you grow up with trauma. You're always waiting for something to go wrong. So you never settle, never unpack, emotionally speaking.
That's something people don't talk about enough. This idea that your body can be somewhere safe, but your mind refuses to believe it, like it's wired to look for danger. And no matter how calm life looks on the outside, your brain's screaming, don't trust it, don't relax.
Exactly, PTSD does that. You walk into a quiet room and your mind's scanning for explosions that don't exist. You sit on a comfy couch and your chest tightens because it feels too quiet, like the calm before a storm you don't even know is coming. I used to walk around rental homes, move furniture every few months, not because I liked change, because I never felt like I belonged. I never felt safe long enough to let the dust settle.
And now, being where you are, in Bathurst, do you feel any closer to finding that sense of home?
Some days. There are moments, like when I make a fresh coffee in the morning, or when I look out at the clouds and it reminds me of Queensland just for a second, Or when I hear birds, that same bloody magpie I swear follows me around, and it reminds me of mornings with her. But then I look around and realize I'm not there. I'm not with her. I'm not with my daughter. And suddenly that moment collapses. That's the hardest bit. The moments feel real, but they don't last.
You're still grieving, not just her, but all the versions of yourself you had to leave behind too. The Scott that was a partner, the Scott that was a full-time dad, the Scott that had a home where he felt like he belonged. Now you're in survival mode, and survival doesn't feel like home. It just feels like not dying.
That's exactly it. Survival isn't living, it's just not dying. And I'm tired of just not dying. I want to live again. I want to feel like this body is mine, like this house is mine, like this town is mine. But it's hard when the memories keep knocking on the door like ghosts with nowhere else to go.
That's powerful. It makes me think maybe the journey back to home isn't about finding a new place. Maybe it's about finding new meaning in the old pain, reclaiming those ghosts, giving them a room in the house instead of shutting them out.
That's a scary thought, mate, letting the ghosts live with you, but maybe it's time. Maybe if I stop running from them, they'll stop haunting me. You know what I did the other night?
What's that?
I sat out on the back step around midnight. The sky was completely black. No street lights, just stars. And I spoke out loud to her. I said, I don't know where you are. I don't even know if you're listening, but I'm tired of pretending you didn't exist. You did, and you mattered, and you still do. Then I just cried for about an hour. Ugly cried, but afterwards the air felt different, like I'd opened a window in a room that hadn't been aired out in years.
That's grief, mate. That's love. That's healing. It doesn't mean you've got it all figured out. It just means you stopped running long enough to feel something real. That's the first step home. Letting the pain stay instead of kicking it down the road again.
Yeah, and it's funny, I get that moment on the back step, and that felt more like home than any house I've lived in the last decade. Just me, the night sky, and the truth. No distractions, no pretending, just being.
That's what we're all trying to find, really. A place we can just be. No masks, no fear, no past chasing us like a bloody dog through a thunderstorm. Just a space where our nervous system can finally unclench.
It's why I named this episode The Long Road Home, because I don't think it's a short walk. It's a lifetime trek with detours, potholes, and flat tires. But I'm still on the road, still walking, and that counts for something.
It counts for everything, mate. And if anyone listening today is feeling lost, like they've been couch surfing through life with no real anchor, just know this. Home isn't where you are. It's what you allow yourself to feel.
That's it, brother. And even if the road's long, even if it feels like it's uphill both ways, just keep going. Because eventually you find the place where your heart stops fighting itself. And maybe that's what home really is. The moment your soul finally sighs and says, okay, I'm safe. You know, Michael, it's been years now since the 2018 Queensland floods, but I still can't forget the smell of it. Not just the muddy water or the mold or the wet carpet. It was something deeper, a smell that hit the bones, like loss had a scent, like heartbreak had humidity. I've lost people, lost pieces of myself, but there was something about losing a home to water that broke me in a way I wasn't ready for. It wasn't just my furniture or my clothes. It was the last place I felt her spirit. It was the home we built, the couch we curled up on, the windows she cleaned and the plants she watered, watching all that wash away. It was like losing her all over again.
Yeah, mate. You've said before that the floods didn't just destroy your house. They kind of erased your timeline. Like someone took your photo album and ran it through a shredder, but instead of pictures, it was memories soaked into walls. I've worked with people who've lost homes before, but what you went through, you didn't just lose a house. You lost proof of a life you built. That's brutal.
That's what did my head in, because everyone kept saying, it's just stuff. And yeah, it was stuff, but it was my stuff. Our stuff, stuff that held meaning, her toothbrush still on the sink, her clothes still folded neatly, a painting she'd bought for me the day after I had knee surgery. I proposed to her not long after that, hobbling around like a muppet in pain, but we still laughed. I couldn't throw that memory into the skip bin with the rest. I kept trying to rescue little things from the waterlogged chaos, but each time I picked something up, it crumbled in my hands. Like grief saying, "No, mate, you're not ready to move on. Not yet."
It's weird, isn't it? Water, something we need to live, became the thing that wiped out the parts of your life that made it worth living. That contradiction can really mess with your brain. It's like the thing that's supposed to cleanse you just drowned you instead.
Exactly. And the worst part, everyone moves on. Insurance companies, real estate, council, neighbors. Oh, well, bad luck. Rebuild and move forward. But what if forward doesn't exist yet? What if the past was all you had and now it's under 2 feet of mud? I remember scraping the carpet for hours, not trying to clean it, just trying to do something, anything to stop thinking. My brain was on fire, and the only thing that helped was grabbing a piece of cardboard and getting down on my knees and scraping. I didn't care that it was 2 a.m. I didn't care that the power was off. I needed the noise. I needed the movement. I needed the distraction.
That's such a raw image. You, in the middle of the night, scraping through ruined carpet like you were looking for the version of yourself before the flood. And you mentioned once that during that period, you also started mowing the lawn in the dark, right?
Yeah. I attached lights to the mower. Legit. I just wired them up like a dodgy little tradie and started mowing from about 7:30 p.m. Didn't stop until after midnight. It was like I was carving a line between madness and control. Each row of grass I cut felt like a statement. Like I'm still here. I still exist. I still have purpose. And then, out of nowhere, a car pulled up. It was the cops. I thought, here we go, they're going to cart me off. But it wasn't that at all. One of the officers was with his son. He said they saw the lights from the road and just wanted to check in. He asked, "Mate, are you all right?" And I said, "Honestly, no. But this is keeping me from falling apart." He didn't mock me. He didn't write anything down. He just said, "All right, well, if you need anything, we're around." And that meant more than I can say.
That's powerful. That simple act of checking in, not judging, not trying to fix, just showing presence. So many people in crisis don't need a savior. They just need someone to see them. Not as a problem, not as broken, just human.
Yeah, and I didn't even know how much I needed that until he drove away. I sat on the steps and bawled my eyes out. I was embarrassed, angry, relieved. I didn't know what I felt, but I do know that moment was a turning point. Not because everything magically got better, but because I realized someone saw my pain and didn't run from it.
That kind of empathy, real, raw, wordless empathy, is rare. And I think it's part of what makes this podcast important. We're trying to do for listeners what that officer did for you. We're turning on the light, not to fix them, but just to say, hey, we see you.
That's it, brother. If there's one thing I've learned from the floods and everything that came after, it's that sometimes the best rescue isn't someone dragging you out. It's someone sitting beside you in the mud and saying, you're not alone. You ever notice, Michael, how sometimes we say things like, I want to go home, but we're not talking about a place at all. We're talking about a person, a feeling. That moment when someone's arms wrap around you and suddenly the noise in your brain gets quiet, that's what she was for me. She was home. Not because she cooked meals or cleaned the house, but because when she smiled at me, I felt like I belonged somewhere in the world. When she died, it felt like I got evicted from my own soul.
That's one of the most honest things you've said, and it's something so many people will relate to, especially those grieving someone they love deeply. When the person you called home is gone, even your own skin doesn't feel like it fits anymore. You said once that sleeping without her felt like trying to rest in a haunted house. Can you talk about that again?
Yeah, it's like the bed was still there, the sheets were still warm, but the energy, the herness, was gone. I'd roll over instinctively to check on her or say something, and I'd hit empty space. My hand would land on cold linen, not her thigh or her hand. That's a different kind of cold. And the nights were the worst, because during the day I could distract myself, go to work, mow the lawn, keep busy. But at night, my brain would go quiet just long enough for the grief to sneak in. I remember thinking, this isn't just loneliness, this is exile.
And it's hard when the world keeps spinning. People go back to work, friends check in less, bills still come. But your body, your heart, they're still standing in the rubble, barefoot and bleeding.
Yeah, and that's what I mean when I say she was home. Because when I was with her, I didn't need to pretend. I didn't need to be strong or tough. I could be soft, I could cry, I could fall apart and know she'd hold me. Not fix me, just hold me. The world doesn't give you that often, but when it does, you cling to it.
I reckon that's one of the reasons why grief feels like being lost. Because when the person who anchored you is gone, you drift. Even if you're surrounded by people, even if you're standing in your own house, you still feel like a stranger in someone else's story.
Mate, I didn't just drift, I capsized. After she passed, I moved houses so many times, I couldn't stay anywhere too long, because every wall whispered her name. Every door creaked with memories. Even the bloody fridge light reminded me of her, because she used to sneak midnight snacks. It was like the house itself mourned her too.
So, what does home mean now for you? Is it a place? Is it this podcast? Is it people?
That's a hard question. I think now home is any space where I'm not pretending, where I can talk about her, talk about my grief, talk about my daughter, who I miss like hell, where I can cry without explaining why. So yeah, sometimes this podcast is home, because you and I, we don't sugarcoat this stuff. We sit in it, we honor it, and that feels more real than most conversations I've had in years.
That means a lot, mate, and you're right. We've created something that holds people, not fixes them, not saves them, but holds them. That's the kind of safety we all need, not a solution. A seat beside someone who says, I've been there too.
Exactly. Because when home is a person and that person is gone, you don't rebuild with bricks. You rebuild with truth, with presence, with real talk, with moments like this. And honestly, I think that's what I want people listening to feel. Not that we have all the answers, but that we're here, that we've walked through the fire and we're still standing. You're scarred, yeah, but standing.
And that's what makes you so strong, Scott. Not that you got over anything, but that you didn't let it turn you to stone. You stayed soft. You stayed human. You turned heartbreak into honesty.
That's all I can do now. And if there's someone out there listening who lost their person, who lost home, just know you're not alone in the cold. You're not mad for missing the way they laughed or how they folded towels. Grief is proof you loved deeply. And that love, it's still in you. It is your home now. You ever sit in a room so quiet that it actually makes a noise? It's not the hum of the fridge or the creak of the house settling. It's something deeper, like your grief has its own frequency. That silence, that's the loudest thing I hear these days. I walk into my living room sometimes and it's spotless, nothing out of place, and yet it feels like a crime scene. Not one with blood, but one with absence. Her laugh is missing. Her perfume's not in the air, and somehow the silence screams louder than anything I've ever heard.
Mate, I've read a lot about the neuroscience of grief, and there's this idea that the brain creates expectations. Like, we subconsciously expect someone to walk through a door or speak when the kettle boils. And when that doesn't happen, it creates a dissonance. It's like the world skipped a beat, and we feel it in our chest, in our bones. I think that's the sound you're describing. The echo of someone who should be there.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be watching TV and something funny happens, and I instinctively turn to the side to share the laugh. Only there's no one there, or I'll wake up thinking I heard her voice. But it's just the house breathing, and the worst part, that's when Bob the Botherer kicks in.
Ah, yes, Bob. For those just tuning in, Bob's what Scott calls his anxiety, that voice that shows up when things are too quiet or too uncertain. So, what does Bob do in those moments?
He pounces. He waits until the world is still, then taps me on the shoulder and whispers, "You'll always be alone. No one's coming. You don't matter." And I know it's not true, not entirely anyway. But when the silence backs him up, it's hard not to believe it. That's why I started talking out loud sometimes, just to break the spell, just to remind myself that I'm here, that I exist.
It reminds me of something you said once, that silence for you isn't peace, it's pressure. It's like sitting in a vacuum. Have you found anything that helps with it?
Weirdly enough, movement. It's why I mow the lawn at midnight or pace the hallway or clean cupboards that don't need cleaning. I need noise with purpose, not just distraction, but motion. It grounds me. Even just saying, "All right, mate, what's the next thing?" It gives me a thread to pull. Otherwise, I spiral. Because the silence, it's like quicksand. And once I sink, it's hard to crawl out.
I get that. And it's why a lot of people with PTSD, like veterans or people with complex trauma, tend to keep themselves overstimulated. Noise isn't the enemy. It's the only thing keeping the monsters quiet.
Exactly. And the irony? Some of the worst flashbacks I've had didn't come during chaos. They came during stillness, when everything was safe. I'd finally stop moving, thinking I could rest. And boom, my brain would throw me straight back into a memory, like it was saying, "Since you've got time, here's something horrible you forgot about."
That's the betrayal of trauma, isn't it? It doesn't follow the rules. It doesn't wait for a convenient time. It sneaks in the back door the moment your guard drops.
That's why I stopped saying I wanted peace, because peace isn't quiet. For me, peace is presence. It's the sound of someone breathing beside you, the hum of the TV in the background, the kettle boiling, the clink of a spoon in a coffee mug. That's the kind of noise I crave, the kind that tells me life is still happening.
So now when the silence comes, what do? Do you still try to fight it?
Sometimes, but lately I've tried something different. Instead of running, I listen. I sit with it and I ask, "What are you trying to tell me?" Sometimes it says, "You miss her." Sometimes it says, "You're scared." Sometimes it says nothing, and that's okay too. But the key is not treating silence like a threat. It's just a mirror, and some days I'm ready to look. Other days I cover it with a tea towel and keep going. Both are valid.
That's so real, because healing isn't about being fearless, it's about being willing to hear what the silence says, willing to admit that even now, years later, it still hurts. That's what this episode's about. The long road home isn't paved with perfect days. It's made of broken ones that we choose to walk through anyway.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this in an empty room, if the silence around you feels too loud, just know this. You're not crazy, you're not broken, you're grieving, you're remembering, you're surviving.
And we're here with you, in the noise, in the quiet, in the in-between. Because sometimes, home isn't where the silence ends. It's where someone finally says, "I hear it too."
You know how people say, "If these walls could talk"? Usually they mean secrets or gossip or some kind of cheeky moment. But for me, that phrase hits different. If these walls could talk, Michael, they'd cry with me. They've seen me at my lowest. They've heard me scream into a pillow so hard my throat went raw. They've watched me curl into a ball on the floor, sobbing, shaking, unable to breathe, unable to move. These walls have seen the storm behind the smile I wear for the outside world. And I reckon if they could speak, they'd whisper, "We know, we saw it all, and we're still standing with you."
Mate, that's bloody beautiful. And I think you just gave a voice to what so many people feel, especially those who live alone and battle their demons in silence. Because when you're living with PTSD or grief or depression, your walls do become witnesses. They become the only ones who truly know the depth of what you carry. What do you think it is about being alone with those walls that brings it all out?
It's the absence of performance. When you're around people, even the ones you trust, there's still this unspoken pressure to keep it together. But when it's just you and the walls, no eyes, no judgment, no expectation, that's when the masks fall off. I've had moments where I've yelled things I'd never say out loud to anyone else. Not because I meant them, but because I needed to release them. And the walls, they took it. They didn't flinch. That's why I don't take silence for granted anymore. It's heavy, yeah, but it's also honest.
There's something poetic about that. Your walls have become part of your healing, not because they fix anything, but because they hold it. Just like you said last segment, healing isn't peace and quiet, it's presence. And in a strange way, your walls have been more present for your breakdowns than most people.
Absolutely. I remember one night, not long after I lost her, I sat on the floor and stared at this patch of paint where she once leaned with her coffee. It had a tiny chip in it, like she'd leaned there so often it wore down the surface. And I just kept staring, whispering, "You were real, you were real, you were real," over and over, because in grief you question everything, especially your memory. And sometimes the only proof you have is a chipped wall and an echo.
That's haunting and deeply human. It also reminds me of how our brains hold trauma in the same way, in corners, in small details. You could be doing something ordinary, making toast, brushing your teeth, and suddenly the floodgates open. One cracked tile becomes a time machine, and unless someone's lived through that, it's hard to explain how overwhelming it is.
Yeah, and that's the danger. People see the outside and assume you're fine. They don't see the conversations you have with the walls. They don't hear the pleading, "Why did you leave me?" Or, "What's the point?" Or, "Just one more day, please." And they sure as hell don't feel the weight of standing in a room full of reminders you didn't ask for.
I've heard people call that living with emotional landmines. You never know when you'll step on something. A smell, a photo, a familiar light pattern, and suddenly you're back in the worst moment of your life.
Exactly. There's a certain time of afternoon when the sun hits my hallway just right that it lights up the same way it did the day I got the call. And for a few seconds, my heart races. My hands go cold. My brain screams, "It's happening again." Even though I know it's not. But trauma doesn't care what you know. It only cares what you remember. And your body? It remembers everything.
That's the cruel part. You can do all the therapy, all the self-work, all the mindfulness, and still, a hallway can undo you. But here's the thing, mate. The fact that you keep walking through that hallway day after day, knowing it might trigger you, that's strength. Not the loud kind, the quiet, relentless kind.
That's the kind that matters, and that's why I started talking to the walls, not like I'm losing the plot, more like I'm reclaiming the space. If trauma can mark these walls with grief, then I can mark them back with truth, with stories, with healing. So now, instead of collapsing every time I see that chipped paint, I say, "That was love, that was real, and I survived losing it."
Mate, I just got goosebumps. That's the essence of what this episode's about. The road home isn't just walking forward, it's walking through memory, through pain, through the walls that once held your world together, and now just echo the past. But if you can walk through that and still keep going, you're already home.
That's it. And for anyone listening who's surrounded by their own silent witnesses, chipped walls, stained carpet, that chair no one sits in anymore, just know, those things aren't your weakness. They're proof you lived. They're proof you loved. And even in the emptiness, you're still here, still breathing, still worthy of home. You know what does my head in sometimes, Michael? Time. Not just clocks and calendars, but the concept of time, the way people talk about it like it's this magical healer. Time heals all wounds, they say. But I've been living with grief, PTSD, anxiety, depression, all of it, for over 40 years, and let me tell you, time doesn't heal squat if you're not doing something inside of it. And that's when Einstein's quote started rattling in my brain. Time is an illusion. If that's true, what the hell are we waiting for when we say, give it time?
Exactly. That quote. The distinction between the past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. It flips everything, doesn't it? We're trained to believe healing is linear, that if we just keep moving forward, things will get better. But what if forward doesn't exist? What if we're just spinning in circles, repeating patterns, stuck in mental loops, unless we actively intervene?
That's the kicker, mate. For years I thought I was making progress just by surviving another day. But all I was doing was dragging yesterday's pain into today and calling it growth. Then I started realizing if time is a loop, then healing needs intention. You've got to step into the loop. I picture it like this. You're watching a reel of your life on a film projector. Same scenes over and over. The moment you finally pause it, turn on the light and go, hang on, why do I keep repeating this? That's when the healing begins.
You've just described trauma perfectly. The body doesn't understand time the way we do. That's why a song, a smell, or a sentence can send someone back 30 years in a heartbeat. Because your nervous system isn't reading a calendar, it's reading danger, it's reading memory. And unless we break the loop, we stay stuck in a past that feels like a permanent present.
Exactly. And for me, breaking the loop meant doing something terrifying. Sitting in the pain, not around it, not distracting from it, not sugarcoating it, just in it, like the time I stood in my laundry, holding a shirt of hers that still smelled like her. I stood there for 40 minutes, mate, crying, shaking, saying out loud, I love you, I miss you, I'm not okay. That moment didn't erase the pain, but it broke the loop of pretending I was fine. And that was the first step.
That's what so many people avoid, that intentional pause, because it hurts like hell. But it's also where freedom starts. And I think Einstein, in his weird and brilliant way, was pointing us toward that truth. That time isn't something you wait out. It's something you enter.
I love that, and it's why I started using what I now call my 3 L's, learn, limit, and listen. I learned from my patterns. I started limiting what I exposed myself to when I was vulnerable. And most importantly, I listened to what my anxiety, my trauma, my silence was trying to tell me. Time didn't give me those tools. I gave them to myself.
And that's the truth right there. Healing doesn't come from the calendar. It comes from consciousness, from asking, why do I react this way? From saying, what am I really scared of right now? From admitting, this hurts more than I want to admit.
And we've got to stop treating emotional pain like it has an expiry date. Grief doesn't run on a clock. Trauma doesn't get bored and leave you alone after 6 months. I still cry when I hear certain songs. I still feel anxious walking into the supermarket on a crowded day. But now, when I feel that pain, I acknowledge it. I say, all right, Bob the Botherer, what lesson you got for me today? Because if I'm stuck in the loop, I may as well learn from it.
That's it. And if you're listening to this right now, feeling like you're stuck, like nothing's changing, please hear us. It's not about how much time has passed. It's about what you do with the time you're in.
Yeah. And it's okay if some days you just survive. It's okay if some days you don't heal. You just breathe. That breath, that's proof you broke the loop, if only for a moment. And that moment, it matters. There's this one memory that's stuck in my head, Michael. A picnic. Sounds innocent, right? Just a picnic. But this one, it's the kind of memory that cuts deep because it was too perfect, too precious. And now it hurts to even look back on. We were in Townsville, and it was just after the rain had cleared. The sky still had that soft, humid haze, and she packed sandwiches and those tiny, fancy crackers I always pretended I didn't like, even though I smashed half the packet. We found this little park under a tree that looked like it was too old to still be standing. She laid the blanket down, took her shoes off, and just smiled at me, like everything was exactly as it should be.
That sounds beautiful. And I can tell from the way you're talking, it wasn't just about the food or the setting. It was that feeling, that rare moment where life slows down and everything makes sense for just a second. What made that memory come back so strongly?
The weather, actually. There was a day last month where the clouds parted the same way. You know that warm light you get in the afternoon, like where it's like the world just exhales? That exact light hit my window and I froze. I sat on the edge of the couch and remembered her. Her face tilted toward the sun, the sound of her laugh when I dropped egg salad on my shorts, and just like that, I was there again. But then the flood hit me. Not water this time. Grief. Grief pretending to be nostalgia, because the moment that light disappeared, so did the calm. And I found myself crying on the floor again.
That's the cruelty of beautiful memories after loss, isn't it? They start sweet, they taste like joy, and then they curdle. And it's not because the memory is bad, it's because the absence is louder than the echo. You ever feel like joy and grief are twins?
Mate, that's spot on. They're so closely linked, I don't think I can separate them anymore. Every joyful memory I have now has a thread of pain woven through it, like the day I proposed to her. I was barely recovered from knee surgery, couldn't even kneel properly, but I was determined. I had this dumb plan. Candles, music, the whole bit, but of course life doesn't follow the script. I dropped the ring, I slipped, I landed on my bad leg and screamed, "Bloody murder." She laughed so hard she almost choked, and in between crying from laughter and helping me up, she said, "Yes." It wasn't perfect, but it was ours.
That's the kind of story people don't tell enough. The messy, painful, real moments that still mean everything. And now that she's gone, I imagine those memories feel like both a gift and a punishment.
Exactly. They're all I have left of her, but they also remind me of everything I've lost. That's the thing about grief no one warns you about. It doesn't just take someone away, it repaints your entire past. Now every memory has shadows, even the happy ones.
And then came the flood, not long after, right?
Yeah. It was like the universe said, let's make sure he doesn't have anything left to cling to. The water came fast. It was up to my shins within an hour. I remember grabbing photo albums, blankets, her old dressing gown, but it was hopeless. And the worst part wasn't what I lost, it was how helpless I felt. Like I was watching my history being washed away and all I could do was stand there and weep.
That sense of powerlessness, it's trauma's best friend. It teaches you that no matter how hard you try, you can't stop bad things from happening. And that belief, once it sets in, can ruin you. Did you ever feel like the flood confirmed that belief for you?
Absolutely. It felt like the universe sealing the deal. I'd already lost her. Then I lost the space we built. The items, the symbols, the scents. I remember sitting in the corner of the bedroom, water up to my ankles, thinking, that's it, this is the full stop. But here's the weird part. It wasn't. Because after the flood, after the cleanup, after the sleepless nights and the trauma flares, I was still here. And that annoyed me because I wasn't ready to keep going. But I did anyway. Michael.
That's resilience, not the feel-good poster kind, the raw, reluctant, drag yourself through the mud kind, the kind that says, I don't want to survive today, but I will.
Yeah. And you know what got me through some of those moments? That picnic, that proposal, those flashes of joy. They hurt like hell, but they also reminded me that I can feel something other than pain, that I have loved, that I still do. Michael.
And that's what we mean when we say the long road home. It's not about getting back what you lost. It's about carrying it forward, letting your memories walk beside you instead of chasing you.
Exactly. So if you're listening right now and you've got your own picnic, your own flood, your own broken knee proposal, know this, you're not crazy for remembering. You're not weak for feeling. You're just human. And that's enough. This one's a hard one to admit, Michael, but I live alone by design. People think it's just how things turned out, that maybe I couldn't find someone, that maybe it's bad luck or circumstance. But the truth is, I chose this, not because I liked being alone, but because being around people started to feel dangerous. Not physically, emotionally. I couldn't handle the risk anymore. I couldn't stomach the idea of letting someone in and then losing them. So I built a little fortress. One bedroom, closed door, one toothbrush, quiet nights, fewer variables, less pain.
That's so honest, mate. And I think more people live that way than they will ever admit. The world's full of people walking around with invisible keep out signs on their chest, not because they're cold, but because they've been burnt. You've said before that solitude can feel like safety and a prison.
That's it. It's both. Solitude is a double-edged sword. It keeps the pain out, but it also keeps the light out. I don't have to worry about anyone breaking my heart again, but I also don't get the warmth of someone holding my hand when I fall apart. It's like putting yourself in emotional quarantine, no risk, but no comfort either.
And let's not forget, when you've experienced loss the way you have, especially that kind of sudden, deep, all-consuming grief, it changes your wiring. You don't just fear being alone, you fear connection. Because connection means exposure. It means opening doors you're not sure you can close again.
Spot on. After she passed, I tried. I really did. I tried letting people in again, but every time someone got too close, my anxiety would scream, "Danger!" Not because they were bad, not because anything was wrong, just because I was scared. Scared that if I started needing someone again and then they left, I'd break in a way I wouldn't come back from.
So you stayed in the safe zone.
Yeah, but safe doesn't mean happy, it means predictable. And that's the trap, isn't it? When you've lived with chaos for so long, you start confusing control with healing. You tell yourself, if I just control every variable, the house, the noise, the people, I won't hurt again. But all you're really doing is building a softer kind of suffering, a pain that's quieter, but still there.
And it shows up in the little ways, like how long you leave the dishes in the sink, how often you talk to the TV, how you forget the sound of your own laughter. It's not about being fine on your own. It's about being undernourished, emotionally starving, even if you're functioning.
Exactly, and I think that's what hit me recently. I was pouring coffee, something I do every day, and I said out loud, 2 sugars, love. No one was there, it just slipped out of me. But that moment, it hit me like a freight train, because it reminded me how much of her still lives in my habits, how much of my aloneness is wrapped in memory.
And yet, you keep going. You haven't closed yourself off entirely. You're still talking, still sharing, still showing up here, with me, with the listeners, with yourself. And maybe that's the beginning of something softer, not a full-blown return to connection, but a toe in the water.
Maybe. I don't know if I'm ready for company in my house, right? But I think I'm ready for company in my story. Letting people walk through the past with me, letting them understand why the lights stay off longer than they should, why I sometimes eat dinner standing up in the kitchen with the TV on for background noise, why I still check the locks 3 times. It's not madness, it's survival, but it's also loneliness.
That kind of vulnerability takes guts, mate. And for anyone listening who's made similar choices, living alone by design, avoiding connection out of fear, just know this. You're not broken. You're protecting something precious. But maybe it's time to ask, what would it look like to protect yourself while also letting in a bit of light?
That's the question I'm asking myself now. Not should I change, but is there room for someone to sit beside me in the dark? Not to fix me, not to rescue me, just to be there. And if the answer is yes, even just a little, then maybe this road I've been on is starting to turn homeward after all. All right, Michael, let's talk about something that sounds ridiculous on paper but meant the world to me. Mowing the lawn at midnight. And I don't mean just a quick tidy up. I'm talking floodlights rigged to the mower, extension cords, wires taped like I was building Frankenstein's grass trimmer. I was out there in the pitch dark from 7:30 at night until nearly midnight, cutting grass that didn't even need cutting. But in that moment, that mower wasn't just a machine. It was a lifeline. I needed movement. I needed focus. I needed the sound, the smell, the vibration through my hands because my brain was screaming, and the only thing that drowned it out was the roar of the blades.
That image says so much without needing explanation, mate. I can see you out there. Headlights glowing on wet grass, neighbors probably wondering what the hell was going on, but you weren't doing it for them. You were surviving. And it might have looked unhinged to someone driving by, but that's what people don't understand. When anxiety, trauma, and grief hit hard, you don't respond logically. You respond with instinct. And your instinct in that moment was to mow through the noise in your head.
Exactly. I didn't care if anyone thought I'd lost it, because I already felt like I had. It was either mow the lawn or smash something, so I chose the mower. And funny thing is, I had this old Bluetooth speaker cable tied to the handle, blasting music like I was DJing some post-apocalyptic garden rave. 1 minute I'd be playing Midnight Oil, next minute John Farnham, and then suddenly it had switched to something ridiculous like ABBA. And I was yelling the lyrics while pushing the mower like I was in some musical therapy session. But beneath it all, I was hurting bad. I was trying to cut through grief like I was cutting through grass.
It's a perfect metaphor. Doing something repetitive, something physical, something just distracting enough to keep the darkness from swallowing you. And what I love about that story is that it wasn't just random chaos. It was deliberate chaos. You weren't trying to make the lawn pretty. You were trying to make your mind bearable.
Spot on. It was like reclaiming a bit of control in a world that felt completely out of control. And then somewhere near midnight, a car pulls up. Headlights hit the fence. Engine hums. It's the cops. And I froze, thinking, great, now I've really lost it. They're here to check if I'm a danger to myself or someone else. And they get out. One of them has his teenage son with him. They're just standing there in the driveway. And he says, "Hey, mate, everything all right?" And I just stared at him. I didn't know what to say. So I said the truth. "Not really, but mowing helps." And do you know what he said back? He said, "All right, that's fair enough. Let us know if you need anything." And they got back in the car, no judgment, no pity, just presence. That moment meant more to me than I can explain.
That's bloody powerful. That right there is what it means to hold space for someone. No fix-it speech, no clipboard, no awkward advice, just presence, just showing up and acknowledging pain without trying to silence it. And for that officer and his son to do that, that's something special. Because in that moment, you were visible, not a problem, not a case number, a human being trying to survive.
Yeah, it made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in weeks. And when they left, I turned the mower off and just stood there. I looked up at the stars and I let myself cry. I let it come. All of it. The grief, the fear, the exhaustion. I cried like a man who just finished running from something for years and finally sat down. And after that night, something shifted. Not a miracle, not instant peace, but a softening, a realization that maybe I wasn't completely invisible after all.
It's strange how the smallest moments become turning points. People always look for grand, dramatic changes, but sometimes it's a mower, a floodlight, and a police officer's quiet kindness that save you. And the lesson there, I think, is that healing doesn't always look clean. Sometimes it looks like midnight madness, but it's still healing.
Exactly. And I've come to believe that sanity doesn't always look sane to the outside world. You have to find your own way to fight back, your own way to remind yourself you're alive. For me that night, it was the smell of petrol, the hum of the motor, the cool wind on my face as I walked back and forth on a lawn I'd already mowed 3 times. It was the chaos with purpose. And if anyone listening has their own version of the midnight mower, whether it's painting at 3 a.m., walking circles around the block, rearranging furniture for no reason, don't feel ashamed. That's not madness. That's survival.
And it deserves respect, because that's the kind of effort no one sees, the kind where you fight off the worst parts of yourself, quietly, when no one's looking. And it's in those moments, when the world is dark and you're the only one awake, that your strength shows up, not loud, but real.
Yeah, and I guess what I want people to take from that story is this. You don't have to explain your healing. You don't have to justify how you're coping. You just have to keep going, even if that means mowing the same patch of grass 5 times in the dark while ABBA blares in the background. If it gets you through the night, it's valid, it's yours, and it counts. All right, Michael, I want to talk about something that happened not long ago. Something that started off simple, just me walking to the supermarket, and ended up being one of those real, raw anxiety moments that hits you when you least expect it. So I'm walking down the street, right? Nothing fancy, just a cold morning, wind in my face, knees giving me a bit of trouble as usual. I had my wallet in my jacket. I knew what I needed, a loaf of bread, some cheese, something quick. But the closer I got to the entrance, the more I started feeling that familiar sensation, the tightening in my chest, the shallow breaths, the heat in my ears. Anxiety wasn't knocking gently. Bob the Botherer was already at the door, halfway through the frame, yelling, "What if there's too many people? What if your knees give out and someone stares? What if you freeze up at the checkout?" And I knew I had 2 choices, turn around and go home, or stand still and listen.
That's a huge turning point, mate. Most people never realize that you don't need to run from those moments. You can actually pause and learn from them. So, what did you do in that moment? Did you let Bob run wild?
Nah, for once I didn't try to outrun it. I reached for what I now call my 3 L's. Learn, limit, listen. First thing I did was listen. Not to Bob, not to the panic, but to me, to what my body was actually saying. And it was saying, I'm overwhelmed, I'm scared, not because I'm broken, but because I've been through too much to walk into a crowd like nothing happened. So I took a breath right there in the car park and I said out loud, "Okay, mate, we hear you." And just saying that grounded me. It was like giving myself permission to be anxious without needing to apologize for it.
That's massive. You weren't fighting yourself. You were supporting yourself. That's what people don't realize about anxiety. The fight is the fuel. You try to shut it up, it yells louder. But when you listen, it calms down. Because anxiety isn't trying to ruin your life. It's trying to protect you, even if it's terrible at the job.
Exactly. And then I moved on to the second L, limit. I looked at the entrance and saw it was packed and thought, nah, not going in just yet. So I waited. I walked up and down the sidewalk a bit, counted the cars, noticed the colors of people's shirts, described them in my head. Blue shirt, black shorts, pushing a trolley, looks tired, that kind of stuff. Because I knew that what I was really doing was shrinking the environment, taking control of something. That's what limit is. Like, don't throw yourself into the storm if you're already soaking wet. Pull back, create space, breathe.
So, in that moment, you turn the world from a battlefield into a little observational playground. That's powerful. It's like stepping back from the noise, not avoiding it, but setting boundaries. That's not weakness, that's strategy.
Exactly. And finally came learn. I asked myself, what is this really about? And I realized something that surprised me. It wasn't the crowd. It wasn't even my knees. It was the feeling that I might be seen struggling, that someone might notice me hesitating, limping, or looking unsure, and judge me for it. And underneath that was the old wound, feeling like I don't belong, like I'm too broken for normal life. That's where the panic came from, not the store, the shame. And when I named it, the fear started to lose its grip.
Mate, that's deep. Because what you're describing is something so many of us carry. This idea that we're not allowed to be vulnerable in public. That if we're not strong, we're a burden. But the truth is, we all feel like that sometimes. And the fact you could break that down in real time, that's incredible self-awareness.
Thanks, brother. And here's the thing, I still walked into that supermarket, but I did it on my terms, and I helped someone while I was there too. This elderly lady was struggling with a trolley, and I offered to swap with her. She looked surprised, then smiled and said, "You're the first person to notice." That moment, that connection, reminded me that anxiety doesn't erase your value. Even when your heart's pounding and your brain's trying to bolt, you can still show up for someone else. And that, I think, is where healing hides, not in the big victories, but in the little acts of grace that slip between the cracks.
That's a beautiful reflection, Scott, because you didn't just survive the moment, you grew in it. You used your fear as a doorway to awareness. You transformed a panic trigger into a practice. And you made someone else's day better in the process. That's the heart of this whole podcast, showing people that even in their messiest moments, they're not alone and they still matter.
Exactly. And I want anyone listening to know, if you're facing a simple task that feels like climbing Everest, that's okay. If your heart races walking into a shop, or you avoid eye contact, or you need 5 minutes just to sit in the car first, you're not broken. You're navigating trauma, and you don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to stay in the game. Use the 3 L's. Be kind to yourself. And remember, even in the panic, there's purpose. Grief's a bastard, Michael. We've talked about that plenty. But what we don't talk about enough is what happens when grief starts wearing a different outfit, when it turns into guilt. I'm not talking about the obvious stuff like, I wish I'd said I love you more, or I should have been there sooner. I'm talking about the slow, creeping guilt that comes from surviving, from continuing to breathe, from laughing again, from finding a moment of peace, and then immediately feeling like a traitor for enjoying it. I remember the first time I smiled after she passed. Proper smile, not fake, not forced, just a real instinctive little moment of joy. And do you know what happened 2 seconds later? My stomach dropped, my chest got tight, and this voice in my head, not Bob this time, but something colder, said, "How dare you be happy?"
That's one of the cruelest parts of loss, isn't it? The way it warps your sense of permission. Like you've made some sacred contract with pain. And if you step outside it, even for a second, you've broken the rules. Survivor's guilt is real, and it's insidious. It tells you that moving forward dishonors what you've lost, when in truth, it's the only way to honor it. But it doesn't feel that way when you're deep in it.
Nah, it doesn't. And it's not logical either. I know she'd want me to smile. I know she'd want me to keep going. But guilt doesn't care about logic. Guilt is emotional quicksand. It pulls you under when you least expect it. I remember walking past a bakery not long after she was gone. They had these cinnamon scrolls in the window, her favorite. I almost walked in and bought one, almost. But I stopped because something in me whispered, "What's the point? And worse, that's hers, not yours anymore." I stood there for 10 minutes, frozen, mourning a bloody pastry.
But that's the thing, mate. It's never about the pastry. It's about what it represents. Those cinnamon scrolls weren't just food. They were her. They were Sunday mornings and coffee cups and inside jokes. And when you saw them, you weren't just hungry. You were homesick. For her. For the life you had. And that's when guilt creeps in. When the mundane collides with memory.
Exactly. And guilt shows up in weird places. Like when you're out and you see a couple holding hands and for a second you smile because it reminds you of something warm, and then that voice says, "You don't deserve that anymore." Or when you laugh at a dumb joke on the telly and immediately feel like you've betrayed the depth of your grief. It's like there's this internal judge handing out penalties for being human.
And the harshest part is that no one else sees it. From the outside, it looks like you're coping, maybe even thriving. But inside, you're dragging chains. You're weighing every smile against a memory, every moment of peace against the storm. You survived. It's exhausting.
Yeah, and I think what's hardest to admit is that sometimes you don't want to let go of the guilt because it's the last link to them. It's like, if I stop feeling bad, maybe I'm forgetting her, maybe I'm moving on too far, maybe I'm erasing the only proof that I loved her deeply enough that I still do.
That's heartbreakingly true, and I think a lot of people listening will feel that in their bones. Because guilt, in grief, often becomes a stand-in for love, We mistake our suffering for evidence, but the real evidence of love isn't in how long you suffer. It's in how you carry their memory forward, not as a weight, but as a light.
That's what I'm trying to learn. Slowly, painfully, I'm trying to make peace with joy, trying to give myself permission to laugh without needing to apologize to her ghost. I still talk to her sometimes, not in a spooky way, just be like she's there, like she's listening, and I tell her, I'm trying. I'm not okay yet, but I'm trying. And I hope wherever she is, she knows that my laughter isn't a betrayal. It's a promise that her love gave me enough strength to keep going.
That's beautiful, Scott, and I reckon she does hear it. And for anyone out there carrying the kind of guilt we're talking about, please know this. Your joy is not disrespect. Your healing is not disloyal. The fact that you can smile, even through tears, is a sign of your resilience. And that resilience doesn't erase what you've lost. It honors it.
Yeah, and maybe that's what coming home really is. Not a place, not a feeling, but a shift, a moment where you stop seeing your survival as betrayal and start seeing it as tribute, a tribute to what was, a commitment to what still can be. Because the long road home, it's not just about grieving, it's about forgiving yourself for surviving. You know what's funny, Michael? For all the talk about finding home, I think what I've really been searching for is a light left on, just one. Something small, a glow in the window that says, you're welcome here, you're expected, you're not too late. I think when you live with grief and PTSD for long enough, you stop looking for castles or perfect endings. You just want a porch light. You want proof that someone out there kept a space warm for you, even if that someone is just you. That's what this podcast has become for me, a little light I leave on each week. Not because I've made it through the darkness, but because I want to remind others and myself that the path back is still open.
That image hits me right in the chest, mate, because a lot of people think healing means getting back to who you were, but it's not. It's about becoming someone new without losing the parts that matter. And that porch light, that glow, that's the symbol. It's not about the house, the walls, or even the memories. It's about the invitation, the welcome. It says, come in exactly as you are. And I think what you're doing here, what we've been doing through every one of these conversations, is creating a space that feels like that for others too.
Yeah, and what I've learned is that the light doesn't have to be bright, doesn't have to chase the dark away, it just has to be there. That's what saved me on my worst nights. Not grand gestures, not breakthroughs, just one moment of clarity, one act of kindness, one song that hit right, one voice that said, you're not alone. And if I can be that voice for someone else, if I can be that flicker, then every painful mile I've walked was worth it.
And it's that presence, that consistent, honest, unpolished presence that makes it real. Because let's be honest, some days that light flickers, some days you forget to turn it on. But the point is, it's yours. And every time you choose to light it again, to record, to reflect, to reach out, you're proving something powerful, that you're still in it, still choosing life, even when it's messy, still choosing you.
Exactly. And I want people listening to understand that the long road home doesn't have to lead anywhere fancy. You don't need to find your dream job or be in a relationship or own a house with a white picket fence. Maybe home is just a soft blanket and a cup of tea at 2 a.m. Maybe it's knowing the voices in your head aren't in charge anymore. Maybe it's knowing that when grief knocks on the door, you don't have to run. You can open it and say, yeah, I remember you. Come sit down. That's not failure. That's fluency in your own emotions.
And that fluency, that emotional literacy, is what so many of us are missing. We're taught how to achieve, how to push, how to grind, but not how to feel, not how to be. And what you've done, episode after episode, is model what it looks like to just show up. In pain, in joy, in confusion, in reflection. And that's what turns a flicker into a flame. It's what lights the way for others.
And let's be honest, I didn't plan this. I didn't wake up one day with a blueprint for healing. I just had stories, pain, laughter, and a desperate need to make sense of what I'd lived through. And from that, this grew, not perfectly, not neatly, but authentically. And if someone somewhere listens to these words and thinks, maybe I'm not crazy, maybe I'm just hurting, then this light I've left on, it's done its job.
It absolutely has. And it will keep doing its job. Because this isn't just a podcast. It's a place, a home, a heartbeat, a tether for people who feel like they're floating off into space. And the more honest you are, the brighter it gets.
So here's what I'll say to anyone listening, especially if you're in that quiet, painful part of the night when everything feels heavy. You don't have to be okay yet. You don't have to be healed. All you need to do is keep the light on, even if it's dim, even if it flickers, even if it's just the screen glow from your phone as you listen to this. That's enough. You're enough.
And if no one said it to you lately, we're proud of you. For staying, for trying, for listening, for not giving up. You've walked further than you think. You've endured more than anyone knows. And you're still here?
Still here. Still breathing. Still finding light in the darkness. And that, my friend, that's home. Segment 11.5. This way up. A light when you're lost. Before we wrap up this episode, there's something I want to share with anyone out there who's listening and feeling completely overwhelmed, like they're stuck in that same loop we talked about, where the pain never softens, where the days blur together, where even asking for help feels like one more thing too hard to do. I've been there. I lived there some days. And on one of those days, someone I trust, a mental health nurse from Outreach Care, gave me something simple, a website, just a name really, This Way Up.
I remember when you told me about that. You said at first you weren't sure it would mean anything, just another digital pamphlet, right? But then you gave it a go. And what you found wasn't just information. It was a genuine starting point.
Yeah, because This Way Up isn't about selling false hope or 5-minute fixes. It's run by professionals, proper clinical psychologists, psychiatrists, researchers, tech experts, people who live and breathe mental health. It's based at the Clinical Research Unit for Anxiety and Depression, CRUFAD, a partnership between St. Vincent's Hospital and the University of New South Wales. So straight away, you know it's legit. But more than that, it feels human, like it was built by people who get what it means to wake up at 3 a.m. with your chest on fire and no clue how to stop spiraling.
And it's not just one program either. They've built 18 different ones, designed for specific mental health challenges, whether it's anxiety, depression, trauma, chronic worry, grief, or stress. They've created structured, clinically backed online courses that walk you through step by step. And you can do them your way, either on your own, right now, without needing a referral, or in partnership with your GP, psychologist, or support worker.
That's what helped me most. The freedom, no gatekeepers, no forms to beg for, no judgment, just me, my screen, and a program that actually talked to me, not down at me. Some days I'd only manage 10 minutes. Some days I'd fly through a whole module because I was desperate for something to hold on to. And slowly it helped me understand my own mind. It gave me language for what I was feeling. It gave me tools. It gave me traction.
And that's the difference between surviving and healing, isn't it? It's not about fixing everything in one go. It's about finding one place where you can start. A safe place. A structured place. And that's what This Way Up is. It's a place to start, without pressure, without shame, without needing to already be strong.
Exactly. You don't have to be stable. You don't have to be ready. You just have to click. That's it. If you can hear this and reach for your phone or your laptop and type in thiswayup.org.au, then you're already climbing. Doesn't matter if you slip. Doesn't matter if you stop halfway. They leave the light on for you. And that's why I bring it up now in this episode, because the long road home isn't just emotional or spiritual, it's practical. It's finding the bloody tools. And this This is one of them, a real one, and I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't say it plainly. If you're struggling and you don't know where to begin, try This Way Up.
And we'll put the link in the notes too. No sponsorship, no agenda, just two blokes who've walked through the mess and who know how bloody rare it is to find something that actually helps.
That's it, brother. This Way Up helped me find a foothold when I was sliding. It helped me breathe again, and if I can pass that on, then maybe this long road I've been walking leads somewhere after all. If this episode spoke to you in any way, if it helped you feel even 1% less alone, reach out anytime. My email is chatwithscottfindthelight@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your story.
And if you're in crisis or just need someone to talk to, please don't wait. Lifeline 30 și 11114. Suicide. Callback service 13006599467. Beyond, Blue 1300224636. Men's Line, Australia 1300789978. 13 YARN, First Nations Crisis Support 139276.
Reaching out for help isn't giving up, it's fighting back. Keep going, keep breathing, and know this, like the light is still on.
Soul searching, fall apart, tunnel vision, hiding in the dark. Well, I ain't gonna holler before I really bleed. Salvation, a quick fix remedy. You said I never could change. I thought I never could change. They said I never could change. Damn right I never would. Leave the light on. Leave the light on. Just leave the light on. Yeah, leave the light on. If I'll ever change, of Nashville, Tennessee, while the cold here in Sweden got the best of me. Well, haven't I got better things to think about than that? Like deadlines, rent's due, bills pile up, family day in, day out, the clock's mocking me, getting old, oh, got the kids deserve so much more than this, gotta get rich. You said I never could change. I thought I never could change. They said I never could